Welcome to the enchanting world of the Never Cross a Witch Bitch podcast. Prepare to be captivated as we embark on a thrilling journey into the realm of spirituality with our remarkable team of a distinctive energy mixture. Leading the way is Mitch Garlington, a gifted gay male witch, touring stage medium, and psychic tarot card reader. With a background in the competitive corporate world and experience as a Cher impersonator, Mitch brings a fresh and unique perspective to our discussions. Next, we have Lucy Locke, a former fundamentalist Christian missionary turned sex shop manager turned professional dog groomer turned psychic medium, trance channeler, and tarot card reader. Her incredible transformation into the spiritual world is truly inspiring. And last, but certainly not least, we have Carly Batten, a second-generation practicing pagan, intuitive oracle card reader, and spiritual mother to many. Carly brings a grounded approach and simple understanding to the complexities of spiritual living. Together, we form an unstoppable podcast as we delve into all things spiritual and the journey of life. Our mission is crystal clear: to spread the message that spirit embraces all and that each of us is on a spiritual path, whether we realize it or not. So buckle up and get ready for an exhilarating adventure with the Never Cross a Witch Bitch podcast. Please note that all ideas discussed and presented in this podcast are the personal opinions of the individual podcasters and do not necessarily reflect the views of each other or the viewers. Hi y'all, it's another episode of Never Cross a Witch Bitch. It's episode 16 now.
16!
Woo-wee. Well, we haven't been saying this enough, but please, it helps the channel a lot if you subscribe. We've got a lot of listeners, but not a lot of subscribers. So if you're watching this via YouTube, please subscribe and like the videos. And if you're watching or listening via Spotify, please subscribe to our Spotify channel. It just helps the channel grow, and it helps us just grow as a podcast. And we want to just be out there a little bit more.
We want the numbers to match up, so get on it.
We want the numbers to match up.
He said it.
we want to know if anybody's actually paying attention. That's what we want to know.
Exactly. Well, we know they are from your fair, actually, but
true.
Well, they say only 50%. It doesn't make sense to me. I was looking up the statistics, and it's like 45 to 50% of people only subscribe to things that they regularly watch or listen to. And it costs nothing. It costs nothing, but it's just the way the algorithms work. The more subscribers you have, the more the channel that you're putting it through. So the YouTube, Spotify will put you out there. And that's what we're looking for, is to reach more people and to grow our audience a bit. It's not about money or anything like that. It's about growing the audience and just being out there, because we don't make a cent from this.
No, we don't.
Also, we just want to help people with the subject matter, because there are so many people that are lost or confused or in a stage of dizziness, and it's kind of like if these can kind of give a little bit of anchoring, it's worth doing, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's a lot of people out there that listeners may go, "Oh, this is normal." There's people that need this, and so we want to be able to put ourselves out there, and by you subscribing, helps build the numbers of the algorithms and how computers work, get us out there for the people that do need this. Need a laugh,
it will come
need
up
a
in
cry.
people's
Exactly.
It will come up in people's suggested. So the more the people sort of subscribe and click the notification button and all that malarkey, actually then will go higher up in the rankings, which then the YouTube or Spotify will then go, we also recommend blah 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 blah
100%. 100%.
Not
And that's how it
to
works.
be a top podcast or anything, but guys, get on it.
The thing is that it's not. It takes 2 seconds, not even 2 seconds, to click a like, and 2 seconds to click a subscribe, and it costs nothing.
Exactly.
But it helps us out a lot, and then it helps other people out that haven't heard the hot podcast that maybe need us.
Yeah, it's that exchange of energy almost, isn't it?
100%. 100%. So today we were going to talk about animals and spirituality and pets and all kinds of stuff animal related. It's going to be a nice one. There's lightness to it, but there is some probably heaviness to it too, because animals are a very important part of the three of our lives, big time. And I think all of us have plenty of stories about how spirit, well, I believe animals are part of spirit and come down in this form and have the spirit energy running through them to help us in this life. So, who wants to get started? Oh,
Oh,
I'm
it's
Lucy,
always
by the
Mitch.
way. Well, we
Oh,
didn't introduce. I'm Lucy. Welcome.
As if we didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm
and who are
Mitch.
you,
Sorry, I
Mitch?
lost my voice there. That was really weird. My voice just went, ooh. What's
You were
going
gonna
on?
make you were gonna make fun of me. You're gonna make fun of me and spirit
I was,
clenched
and
your
Spirit
throat.
came in and like, we're not having that. You're guys ambushed me, I think.
I love it. And I'm the other one.
The other one. Oh dear. Yeah. Well, where do we start? Well, the reason this one came about is because actually we were having a lot of people asking about, for me, I was getting a lot of people saying, do our animals come back through in readings or when we're doing demos? And for me as a medium, absolutely, that spirit still is there, it still exists. So it stands to reason that your animals are going to come through just as much as your humans. And I do find quite a lot of people I'm reading for sometimes get more excited about the animal than the human that's coming in, you know?
No,
Like,
I could
yes,
believe
mum and
that.
dad, yeah. I've had it loads of times where they're like, oh, I didn't care about mum and dad. I want to know that my dog or my cat or my parrot is there or whoever, you know? Um, so that's a common theme. And yeah, it's lovely when you get, I do feel with animal spirit energy, it feels a lot more pure. It's a lot more, what's the word? Untampered. Is that the right word? I'm going to use.
Interesting.
Undiluted, unfiddled with.
Yeah, it's just an unconditional vibration without no crap or no bullshit. So I do feel when
Mm,
animals come in, it's always quite a special experience, particularly when you know that you've hit something or there's something specific that they can give, because they will still give specific energy to let them know that they're there, they're safe, they're fine, they're happy, you know? So yeah, it's quite a cool gifting, isn't it, really? Um,
mm,
really. Yeah, so I don't know how
mm.
we want to start this or where we want to delve into this because there's so many strands and offshoots about kind of animal connection and communication and
Well,
everything.
I'll start out with a quick story.
Go on.
Well, I'm an ex-dog groomer. I was a or a retired dog groomer. I don't want to sound like I split away and was like, screw you, dog grooming, because I actually really like dog grooming. So I retired from it because my body decided it was time to retire. You don't see very many old dog groomers out there. It's a hard job. But anyway, dogs, huge part of my life, my career for 22 years. But anyway, and part of how I came to realize the power of energy was working with dogs. Spirit showed me, and it wasn't like Spirit was like, Lucy, this is how it works. It was just, I saw that my energy and how I felt affected the dog on my table. And I struggled when I first started grooming. I really struggled with getting them to behave because I was quite an anxious person. I didn't feel I was very good at my job at the beginning. And I didn't know about that. I thought having control meant putting them into place and making them, you know what I'm saying, forcing them to do stuff. And when I realized, wow, when I'm calm inside and going with the flow, my dog on my table is relatively calm or
Mhm.
more calm than when I'm uptight and feeling rushed and this and that and thinking all these nasty thoughts about myself.
Mm.
When I cleared myself, the dog was clear. And it really showed me that energy exchange. And it actually helped me get in tune with myself more and more because I realized if I was having a bad day, the dogs on my table were not good that day.
It's
You know,
interesting.
they were picking up. I noticed too where we lived when I first started grooming in Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada. We get some wicked storms, okay, like proper tornado-y, thundery, real nasty storms in the summer. And it would be clear outside, and we would be like looking at our dogs on the table, and you could feel the energy in them. They would be they didn't want to be there. They'd be dancing around, and they'd be irritable. And we'd all say, it's going to thunderstorm tonight. It's going to be a big electrical storm tonight. And lo
Mm.
and behold, we'd have some really wicked weather a few hours later. And it's like the dogs, the animals could sense it before it was even coming, like before it was in our presence, that the human can sense it.
They
Like to
had
me,
that sixth sense almost, didn't they? Yeah.
I knew a groomer that she had, this is going to sound, that's not rude, but when the dogs were on the table, they were constantly sniffing at her breast. And it was like her left breast, and they were just
Kind
constantly.
of weird.
It sounds perverted or whatever, but it's not. They were just constantly, and she thought something's not right here, and she went and got checked, and she had it was a benign tumor, but there was a tumor
Oh, wow.
in there. It's incredible. We talk about being grounded with Mother Earth. They are the ultimate of grounded with Mother Earth.
But animals have got there's no dilution. So they live very much in the here and now. They are being at that moment. And yes, they do hold thought patterns. I mean, we've all had dogs, we've all got dogs. Dogs will lay on the floor and dream. I mean, my yellow Labrador regularly would start woofing, and you'd be like, what's he woofing at? And you'd turn around and he's like led on the floor. I don't know what he was chasing, pheasant, I don't know, rabbit, whatever he was chasing. So they do dream. So it's not like they don't know of things in the past, but so they, horses, dogs, cats, all animals, will hold things that are in the past, which is why you have problems with dogs having a fear of men or a fear of being in cages, but they don't worry about the future. They live today as it is today. So there's nothing, there's no dilution. So because of that, I think that animals are more in touch and engaged with energetic vibrations, pressure, energy pressure, because they can feel it all, because they're not worried about what they're having for dinner, what's got to go on the shopping list. Their brains aren't dealing with all that other crap that we deal with in our everyday lives. I think if we could switch that off, like picking the kids up, doing this, doing that, ringing so and so, blah blah blah, all that monkey chatter crap that we have, we could switch off and just be in the moment, we would feel a lot more that what's going on. We would have that sixth sense and that extra bit of feeling and knowing. I mean, it's just, I think that's why
the word is awareness. I think awareness.
Yeah. Definitely, we'd have more of that awareness. I mean, I grew up with a Jack Russell and then ended up having another Jack Russell. So, and Brammy, she was awesome. Bramble, she was just absolutely brilliant. She was, but she hated thunderstorms. She was, she could be a little bit temperamental. She bit my Uncle Ron's nose once because he was just in her face. And Jack Russells don't warn, do they? So big dogs growl and go, "Oh, bugger off." Little dogs just, you're in there and you've lost your nose or your ear or your finger.
They're ratting dogs, right? So they just go for it. They don't hesitate because a rat's pretty fast. You know what I'm saying? A rat has their own senses to know what's going on around them, so they need to be on it. And so they're constantly just. And terrier means earth. That's actually the word for terrier is mean earth. So it's earth dog. Sorry, you guys. My geeky dog side's coming out today. But yeah, it means earth. So they're very grounded. They're very in tune, very primal with the earth. So you got your Scottish terriers, and they're all kind of ratting, mousing, digging holes, going into their earth dogs.
I didn't know that. See, every day's a school day, isn't it? It's amazing. So it's she would know instantly when there was like a thunderstorm, saying about thunderstorms and that coming. She'd be like maybe 12 o'clock in the afternoon and you sort of might feel it a little bit, but she'd start like hiding under the blanket. I mean, the classic one is she'd hide under the throw on the sofa, and then you wouldn't even know she was there, and you'd go and sit on her accidentally and you have your ass bit because she's hidden under this blanket on the sofa.
I would have been scared of her when I was young. I would have been terrified.
I just knew you knew your boundaries with Bramble. You just knew your boundaries. It was a bit like okay, but she she would know when things had changed. And the Labrador, not so much, but definitely Bramble, she would know. But, we were talking about sort of your energy and about keeping it calm. I had a friend of mine who had a mare who was a little bit fresh, let's put it this way. She could be a little bit sprightly. And she was a young girl at the time, and she turned up on the yard to take the pony out. And I said to her, I said, just be careful what you're doing. I said, you're on edge. You've come away from school and you've got an arse on. I don't know what's happened at school. I said, just be careful. I really don't think it's a good idea you go out for a ride. No, 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 I'll be all right. I'll be all right. And I was like, Anyway, 30 minutes later, young lady came back and she said, oh, I don't know what happened. We went across this field and she just took off at a rate of knots. So we ended up jumping this dry stone wall and she's cut her knee and da da da. And I went, well, what did I say? I said to you, you shouldn't be getting on board and you shouldn't be riding. And she's like, oh yeah, okay, fair enough. But it's because what this young lady was transmitting was before she'd even got on there. And it's been proven by people like Monty Roberts, who's an amazing horse whisperer, that you can move horses with your energy. You can
I've seen it. You can move dogs. You can do stuff with dogs with your energy. I totally agree with you, Carly. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. It is quite something. It's quite something. It's horses are animals are generally just amazing, aren't they? And with the whole, and I'm getting distracted. That's right. Somebody's banging the doo-doos out my front door because they can see me sat here recording the podcast.
And they're trying to get your attention.
Oh, you need to use a little sign to tell them to bugger off.
Mitch, is your Oscar still by you? Or did he bugger off?
He had a little growl. He's now just gone right underneath my chair and he's lying down below me, which he doesn't.
I want to know, because you were talking about how you got Oscar. Because Oscar is quite a special dog.
He is a character.
If you and Paul didn't have him, I don't know what his life would have ended up as.
I think he probably wouldn't have actually had a life, to be honest, because I think it was getting close to the time he was going to be, euthanized if someone didn't take him on. So I think the sort of cats and dogs home saw me and Paul coming, and they were like, brilliant, these two take him on. But it's interesting how he came to us, because I really do feel Oscar picked us, actually, because I did so for quite a long time, we'd been wanting a dog, and we'd been looking at a few here and there online and different things, and there was just nothing feeling like it connected. And Paul was very adamant it had to be a Jack Russell, and everyone was like, are you sure you want a Jack Russell?
Why did Paul want a Jack Russell? Did he have a reason?
Because he's had Jack Russells before. It's his favorite breed, and he's like, oh no, if we're doing a dog, it's got to be a Jack Russell because they're fun. They've got such a playful way. They're energetic, and it's like, okay. Anyway, so I did this spell. And I always say with Oscar, he's the spell that went wrong, but really he's the spell that went right, because in the spell, I asked for a dog that we could give a great home to, a dog that we could love unconditionally, and just give complete safety and security to. And that's exactly what we got. But I never thought when I did the spell about Oscar's own mental health or his general behavior. That didn't even come into my mind, because I was quite naive. This is the first dog that I've ever had and everything else. Anyway, we were scrolling through various places, and we were on one of the cats and dogs homes, and there was this dog that Paul fell in love with called Letty, and it was a little tan sort of girl Jack Russell, and then underneath Letty was his picture, and I looked at it and I was just like, straight away, that's the dog. And and it was so weird, but I saw his picture and I was like, that's him. And Paul was like, no, I don't really like him. Anyway, we went to sort of have the we went to book him in for the meetings. Well, literally, as we got there, Letty was walking out with a new owner, so it was like, well, that's not going to happen. So she'd already gone, and then they were like, did you have a second choice? And we were like, oh well, Oscar. And they all looked very nervous. They all looked very scared. And they're like, well, it'll take us about 20 minutes to prep that up, but we can do an introduction. Now, that should have been our warning. That something
padded suit.
Yeah, but again, we were naive. We were first time like dog people. We were just buzzing to be in there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um.
Yeah. No, I
So
get
anyway,
you. Get you.
yeah. So we sat down in the waiting room, none the wiser. Well, they gloved up and got ready, and But when we went in and met him, literally, she's like, "I'm going to leave you on your own for like half an hour to just see how you connect with him." And he was fine. He was perfect. He just played with us. He loved us, and in that moment, it just felt like, "Yep, this is how it's meant to be." So it's pretty cool. It's pretty lush. Then
Yeah.
afterwards, we found out there was all this backlog of stuff that we hadn't been made aware of because really, as first time dog owners, he should never have been put with us. He had such a troubled sort of past. There was a lot of behavioral stuff that we were never told about. And so over the months, all this stuff was coming to the surface, and me and Paul were like, shit, what's going on here? But by that time, you've fallen in love. So you've got to just see the journey through, haven't you,
Mm,
really?
Well,
mm,
I was just thinking it's easy to love unconditionally something that is good and perfect and well behaved. And you were saying
Yeah.
something we can love unconditionally and spirit is like, I'll teach you unconditional love. I'll
Literally,
teach you
this is the
unconditional. Yeah.
lesson. Yeah, 100%. And there have been times when Oscar's nearly broken me and Paul up at times when his behavior's
Mm.
been like off the scale. But through a lot of different things, a lot of different bits and pieces we've had to do, we've got there. And is his life perfect? No, but he's 80% there, and he has a quality of life.
Oh, he has a
So,
big quality of life with you too. Big
yeah,
mm.
quality of life with you too. Yeah.
exactly. We've worked with behaviorists that they just basically just couldn't deal with him. They just washed their hands in a way. And we had to kind of raise funding to go private. He's now on tablets, which costs us £300 a month. So we have to
Wow.
make sure we have that. But you've got to do it, haven't you? Really.
Mm,
But
mm.
none of that
Well, you know
matters
what?
when you've got the
You have
connection.
you love him so much that you go, there's no choice for me but to do
Yeah,
that. If he was with other people, like you've had vets say to you, I think it's you should just
we've had so
use them.
many vets, probably about 10 vets. They put him down. There was one lady; she had the needle ready.
And I what I love about your story, Mitch, is Paul. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Oh, the love that comes out of Paul with that dog. It's
Oh, he was Paul's
absolutely
dog. Yeah, I mean, he's my dog, but he's
yeah,
also very much Paul's dog.
yeah.
It's like every time Paul comes home from work, he's so excited to see Paul. He's bouncing up and down, and it's almost like to me, be gone, peasant. I've had you all day. It's kind of Paul's time now. You know?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like Paul is so, you know, it's like your child. You're like, like you invite Mitch and Paul out, and it's like Paul's the number one thought is Oscar. What, how long is it
Yeah,
going to be? And will I be able to just like a parent is with their child? When I'm like, oh, let's put the dogs in the kitchen and we're off. Like,
yeah, yeah. It is. It
they
is.
got some foods and water, and we're off. Not for days. I mean, for a couple hours.
No,
Like,
he is like our kid, and it's like, and I think that's one thing that I am so scared of when the day comes when he has to transition, and I know he'll be safe, but that scares the shit out of me because he's with me every day.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
So,
understand that.
and I've never had a dog before. I've never had an animal for that length of time. So I've got no idea how I'm going to be. I know I'm going to be a mess when that time comes.
Yeah.
Mm,
Hopefully not for a long time, but it does scare me.
mm,
Yeah, my poppy who I had, so when I moved to the country here, I'd always had moved to the UK. I always had dogs in Canada in my adult life. And so when I moved here, I didn't have dogs. I actually part of me moving here, I gave my two chihuahuas that I had up for adoption to a lovely family, really lovely family. So I felt really good them going there. I knew they were going to be absolutely loved, and it was a trust that put them together. Like I didn't find this family on my own. I actually went through a dogs and cats home, but I knew who
Mm.
they were going to, if that makes sense. So it wasn't like I gave them up to the dogs and cats home. They just knew that they were going
Yeah,
to find a
it was a
family for
safe
me.
transaction, well, not transaction,
Yeah,
but a safe
yeah,
exchange.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And it was and I saw pictures of them by accident on Facebook years later, and they were both still together because I wanted them together. Does that make sense? And they
Mm.
had no
mm.
teeth and they were sitting there all old and stuff like that, but they looked really loved and happy by his family. So I went a couple of years without having a dog, which was weird. And then I like you wanted a dog, and I wanted a small dog because I knew where we lived it wasn't going to be good to have a big dog, even though I end up with small dogs, but I like big dogs, if that makes sense. But small dogs,
Mm.
I have a big dog now. I've got a greyhound, but um anyway, I adopted Poppy, and it was one of those ones where like 800 people went for her photo because she looked so cute, right? She looked so cute in the photo. But then they were like, can't be with kids under 16, can't. And I was like, well, I don't have any kids. I'm not planning on having any kids. And I said to them, I'm a dog groomer. I work as a dog groomer, and I'll be able to, take her with me to work and blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, I was her first they were like, yay, we got the correct owner, because there was a lot of people with kids that wanted her. She was cute. Does that make sense? She was as cute as a poppet, but she was a bitch. Okay, so she was like, she was owned by like I don't know what people think sometimes, and I hate the word shouldn't. I judge sometimes. But this family decided, the kids were in their 60s, decided to get their 90-year-old mother a dog.
Oh, not practical, is it?
Yeah, not at all. And so they bought Poppy as a puppy, and she was a Chihuahua Jack Russell. So imagine that combo together. Okay, that's
Mm.
that's a lot right there. Two feisty dogs together, and gave her to so the woman loved her. Okay, there was no doubt, but I don't think she left the apartment building or the apartment very often. Um, um, she was fed. They had her neutered, like spayed and all that kind of stuff. So she was, well taken care of and stuff like that. But the woman got dementia. And so it was time to give Poppy on. And that Poppy was 2. Poppy had never seen a leash. So every time I got a leash out, she would snap at me and bite me. But the first time I met her, I never had, in my 22 years, had a dog like really sink down and bite me. I've had nips and them, go for me really quick, but I've never had a kind of bite where I'm like, oh, bleeding. Well, Poppy was my first bite, and that was when I first met her the very first day. I went to say hello to her, and she got me good, and I was like, you fuck her. Yeah, you won't fuck her. Right? And I was like, you're mine. I said to the woman that was fostering her, I'm like, do you mind if I take her for a little walk? And she's like, no problem. We were met at a park, and I went around the corner, and I'm like, now you sit. And she sat. I'm like, me and you, we're together now, and you're gonna have some discipline in your life, And she was like walking beside me, and oh my God, she was my companion for 13 years. She went through bad relationships with me. She would go on the London Eye with me when I traveled through London to go to work. She was on the buses with me. She was at work every day with me. And she passed away about 3 years ago at the age of 15. And it broke my heart, but at the same time, so this is my story with Poppy, my spiritual story. She helped me in times of loneliness, in times of feeling really distraught, even just putting my hand on her, even if she would go, you know what I'm saying? I knew she was there for me. Um, and I never felt, because my life was so chaotic, and my emotional life was so chaotic. I never felt I gave her the love she deserved. She was there. Does that make sense? And stuff.
Mm.
And the first time I ever met Mitch, he did a reading for me, and Colin was with me. And Colin was a part of Poppy's life. Colin actually was very good to her in her elderly age. He built her ramps to walk on, even though she'd growl at him. He picked her up and took her down the stairs, and she'd be growling at him. He'd clean up her pee because she was losing her bladder and all that kind of stuff. Mitch brought through, he says, I've got this dog here. It looks like a Jack Russell, but it's not quite a Jack Russell. And we right away knew it was Poppy. And you said she was very thankful for the life that you gave her,
Oh, that's making me
because
go goosey, you saying that.
and because she wouldn't have had that life with anyone else. She would have been probably passed on from home to home or euthanized. And that's what I always thought, that if I hadn't taken her, and I promised her that I would have her till her end days, because I didn't have a dog till its end days, except for the one in my childhood. I always had something, always chaotic came up in my life, and I'd have to give them away for adoption and stuff because I couldn't give them that foundation, and I wanted to give her that foundation, and I was able to. And then Mitch reaffirmed she was very thankful for that foundation and for that love, And
Mm.
boy, oh boy, you want to talk about crying. He brought through my grandma, and I'm like, hey, grandma, bye. Hi, grandma. But I was like, Poppy, I was like, and you're like, I didn't mean to make you cry. And Colin was like, like that. But
Yeah.
dogs and cats, they just got this, because they're so unconditional. I've seen people abuse dogs, come into the groom shop, not even abuse. I don't even think they mean to abuse. I've seen people with alcoholics come into the groom shop and they've got this dog that's this ratty old thing and this alcoholic that can barely hold its life together. And that dog absolutely loves that man.
Yeah,
Mm.
there's
You
no
know?
judgment, is there?
Yeah. I've seen homeless people where the dog is just following behind and people go, that's awful. No, that's unconditional love.
Mm.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Maybe we would choose different, but maybe that dog chose that man. And that is like that bond between that man, that spirit wants for that man in this lifetime or that woman in this lifetime to have with that animal, because that's all they have.
Mm.
Yeah, and like you say, there could be additional lessons or deeper understandings, because definitely for us, part of the, like I said, the spell to love unconditionally, he has tested us to breaking point sometimes, but we still love him unconditionally.
Mm,
And
Mm.
also, he shows us the love. It's like in this house, or in this bungalow, this is the first place we've been able to let him sleep with us at night, because he was in the front room, scared every night. So in the end, we were like, oh, he's going to have to sleep with us. So we have to muzzle him just for our safety, which he's
mm.
fine about. He doesn't care. He's like, get me that muzzle on. I want to snuggle up with you
Yeah,
guys.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then, he will literally kind of curl up between me and Paul, and he'll stay there all night, snoring the loudest. And the fact that he does that, because one of his conditions when we first got him was lack of sleep. He just would not sleep. So we've been through
Mm,
this whole journey, and now he didn't stop sleeping. Like, he's sleeping at the moment, literally underneath my chair. That would have never have happened. Like in the early days, he would have been trying to snap at me, be trying to bite me. I couldn't even go near him. So it's a massive turnaround. I was going to say, have you guys ever, or has your when you've been doing your witchcraft or your readings or your spiritual work, have you felt either the physical animals coming in to be part of that, or if they've passed to spirit, have they come in spiritually for you?
Mm. Mm. So it tends to be actually um it don't always not always when I'm doing spiritual work, but I've sat with a lady who her name is Elaine, and she does a lot of horse communication. She's amazing. So I sat on a workshop with her at the healing weekend, and I don't normally sit in meditation. So we've actually done like a group workshop meditation. I actually sat and actually had a moment where she walked you through certain bits, and then she said, "You will then see as you're walking down this path, you see this 5 bar gate. Who do you see in the field?" And I actually saw my horse. I thought I was going to see my first pony, but I didn't. I saw my horse that I had to sell to move down to Wiltshire to come and do what I
Oh,
ended
mm,
up doing.
mm.
And
well, that's good.
I ended up in absolute, I like came round and I made me go funny now. I was absolutely in floods of tears. But it was just so powerful because me and I mean all my horses I have a really good relationship with. And certain horses are here to teach you certain things. Um, but Charlie I had to sell. So
Hmm.
the end of his life, I was never around. I mean, he's not alive now, but I wasn't around for his end of life. And I got that feeling that he would sort of, if you ever need anyone, you just need strength, I'll be here. We had a really, he was definitely a one person horse. He had lots of really funny little quirks near feed time. He'd squeak his teeth. Oh, you could hear it from the other side of the yard making their tea. He'd literally squeak his teeth at you, be like, oh, don't do that. But he was really funny. If anyone else went in the box with him, he'd like look down his big thoroughbred, 16-2 thoroughbred. Um, but I had an amazing connection with him. And there's been times, not necessarily in meditation, but there's times definitely when I've been here and I've seen my Springer Spaniel. So Gemma, she comes in, and normally she'll be sat down by the door, like all the spaces in the house, and she'd be sat down, and you just see a flash. And Basil, we've spoken about Mrs. Audrey Lady. I inherited her old Jack Russell. And we got him, he was about 17 when he died. So I had him a couple of years, about 3 or 4 years after Mrs. Audrey Lady died. But he got to a point where he couldn't really see, but he'd still trot around. So he was sort of a bit like a Parsons. He was quite long, quite tall, but and he'd like know where things were, but he weren't quite sure. So you'd have the odd bump into the fridge freezer, the bin, the door, the wall, and you'd hear this little bonk, and then so there's been times where I've literally been sat where I am now, and I'll look out into the hallway, and I can see this little Jack Russell Bottom disappear around the corner. And obviously he's passed away now, he's no longer here. But there's definitely times when they come in, and it's normally for a reason. There'd be something for a reason. Gemma was with me, like your Poppy, Lucy, was with me. Great dog, but she was with me through a lot of crap. With my ex-partner, and I was quite mentally ill at one point. I was doing 7 days a week. I was running. I wasn't well. I wasn't well. I look back on it now, and I was quite poorly. And I would like come back from running, but like stretch out and lay on the floor and like stretch my muscles out and sort of, practice a bit of breathing and things. And Gemma used to come and lay like up my side, but put her head on my forearm, and we'd just lay there, and she'd just literally lay by the side of me. So I always used to get a lot of strength from that. She wasn't a great cuddly dog. She was a Springer, so we're forever like on the go. There's no cuddling. It's not like a Labrador you can like wrap yourself around. But there was moments when she would just be my strength and be my moment of breathing. And she normally appears when I need to stop and think what I'm doing, or slow down, or take a breath. And it'll be literally like, oh, it's her again, So I get not necessarily. So they visited not necessarily when I've been.
It's moments of healing, isn't it? Almost.
Yeah, as moments of needing, definitely. My first pony used to come through to me quite a bit, but he hasn't been for a while. So I think I'm probably settled, and he's very much in touch with my inner child, which obviously I've now grown past that. So he hasn't been around for a while, but yeah, definitely when those moments of needing, I will get the flash out the corner of the eye, or I might have a little bit of a dream, or yeah, it's quite interesting. What about you guys?
Well, I was going to say, for me, like if I'm doing a spell, if I'm doing a reading, or if I'm doing magic of any kind, Oscar will always pop himself in, like either under my table, because I've got like sort of I've got the table set up with like the Sabbath wheel on, the witch's wheel, and he'll like just literally go underneath while I'm doing any sort of form of magic. And I actually do feel like he is a bit of a familiar for me as well. He knows that like that energy comes in, and he needs, or he don't need it necessarily, but he gives me that extra boost. And familiars, they can be pets, but like the connection is a lot deeper. And because we've
I almost saw him in my mind's eye like a wizard with you. I saw you as like in a wizard kind of outfit, and him in a wizard's outfit beside you. It just was like boom, like in my mind.
Yeah, definitely. I really do feel like we've been connected before, and I think he was a human before. I'm wondering if he may have been hit past life, but like, but definitely, like, no, I'm sure
Does
he
he have a
isn't
little
hit.
tash there or a little hair
Yeah,
thing? Have you ever seen that website?
Oh, I've
Catsthatlook.com
seen
if you
that. Yeah, definitely. But no, there have been times though when he's tested me, when I thought you must have been like a right little shit in a last life. You may have been some sort of, I don't know, psychopath or murderer. But no, we've worked
Napoleon
past
or
that
something.
stage now. But like, but yeah, but he will come in to always lend a hand with my magic, or even if I'm doing magic in the garden, he'll come out. And it's not that he's just looking at what I'm doing. It's like he parks his energy as if he's a piece of the spell almost. So, and I'm wondering, because essentially he came from magic, I wonder if that's part of what his energy is, maybe.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Like this little area that I've created in my house, my little area, the dogs come in here and they instantly lay down.
Mm.
There's like,
Yeah.
you'll see them come through the curtain and it's just like this little, like our house is peaceful all over. I really feel that. Does that make sense? And I do try to make that energy, but they, because I do a lot of, like you say, magic, my own meditation, just really being in the power in this
Mm.
little area. Even my plants compared to the other, my plants are healthy in the other parts of the house, but this part, oh my God, they're like,
They're like
what I said to
thriving.
Colin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said, Colin, look at the plants. They're like, just like really, you could feel the energy from them. And I own a hairless dog named Dougal, and people get really weirded out by hairless dogs. And they go, but everything has its purpose. Does that make sense? Especially in dogs and how they're bred. So he's a Jack Russell mixed with a Chinese crested, which the Chinese crested is where he gets the hairless breed from. And in ancient times, hairless breed. So you got them all over the world. You got the Chinese crested, you got the Mexican hairless, you got the Peruvian hairless. Well, there's loads of other ones where if you notice, they're with like tribes. So
Mm.
back in the day, these dogs, evolutionary or however their gene came into place, the tribes thousands of years ago that wandered used them. They went with them and they're called magical dogs. And because they're hairless, they're like hot water bottles. You touch them, they're very, very warm. And so they were called magical dogs because they would lay with the infirmed, the arthritic, the dying, and
Mm.
they would bring comfort to them. That's all Dougal wants out of life is to lay with you and be with you and
Mm.
literally be skin to skin contact with you. And that's what they're created for, that skin to skin. For people that can't get that skin to skin from a human, like you know how a baby, it's skin to skin.
Mm.
Yeah.
Hairless dogs are for that skin to skin contact to make you feel alive, a part of, wanted in this earth,
And he
needed,
does have a
cared
really
for.
cool mohawk as well, doesn't
Mohawk,
he?
yeah. Yeah. And he's got pimples. I like his pimples. And a lot of people that know me that know Dougal know I like the pimples on Dougal. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, I've always called him my soul dog, right? Ever since I got him, I'm like, Poppy's my companion, Poppy's my good friend. Because the two of them I got quite a few years apart from each other. But then I got Dougal and I was like, you're my soul dog. He's as thick as shit, okay? He's not the sharpest tool in the shed. He's blind. His tongue hangs out of his mouth way down. He's got missing teeth. He's as ugly as sin. But to me, he's the most cutest, beautiful thing I've ever laid eyes on. Okay. I fell in love with him the moment I saw him. And I called him my soul dog. Well, just about a couple of months ago, and I've said that to people loads of times, he's my soul dog. A couple of months ago, we were in Circle. We did a pets night where, and only a few of us showed up to that, which was quite surprising. But we were gonna like not tell each other's pets, but like give feedback on what Spirit was saying about each other's pets and all this kind of stuff. And Deb's Thai Duck got me. So I was sitting there and she was like, your hairless dog, he's your soul dog. He's telling
Oh,
me right now that he's your soul dog. And I was just because you know how you say things and you're hoping they're true. And then
mm. When it's validated, isn't it?
when it's
Mm.
validated, you're just like, oh my God, he feels the same about me,
Yeah.
you know? And it, you know, another way I got into this spiritual life like this was through Pets at Home, where I worked as one of their groomers that taught around the country. They sent me a secular, you know, big business. We're talking multi-million pound business, sent me on a Reiki course so that I could do Reiki on dogs. And that's how I got my Reiki one.
Oh.
And then I know a lot of people that spiritually open up with Reiki. That's the first, almost every
Mm.
spiritual person that works in the field, there's like, oh, the first thing that I got into was Reiki, you know,
Mm.
and then it's like the door is open and you see the power of energy really, and energy just starts to work in your life without you even realizing at first what's
Mm.
going on. And
Mm.
Mm.
it was amazing to work with dogs using Reiki too while grooming. And so I had an
Definitely.
incident where I was doing a dog's nails. He was a wild dog, and this owner came to me, and I got this a lot where people are like, nobody can do my dog. But I've heard you can handle dogs, and I still would sweat over even knowing inside, yeah, I can handle your dog. There was this part of, when is it going to happen? When am I going to get that throat ripped bite that's going to bring, bring me to the knees, like, or, make me have to go to the hospital or whatever, but I never ever came. It never happened in 22 years. But I had this dog. It was just a short-haired dog and it was nails. That was it. But the dog, it had been abused before they got it. And dogs don't live in the moment. Or, sorry, that's not what I meant to say. Don't live in the past, nor do they live in the future. They live in the moment. But when they've had trauma in their life, it's called trigger memory, which we have too, right? So they're not walking around going, I was abused before I was, like we do. We tell the story over and over again, and we live in story and we get stuck in story. They don't get stuck in story, but the trauma stays in the body, if that makes sense. So that's where the trigger will come. Something that reminds them, something that will maybe take them back to that feeling of the potential of that happening. And sometimes, so for this guy, he had all four of his legs broken in some sort of abusive, awful situation. And so his legs were kind of fused, if that makes sense. So he couldn't bend them back to get the nails done. And plus, dogs don't like them bent forward either because they get off balance. And that's why dogs, it's not the nails itself, it's the balance that dogs are worried about when they get their feet trimmed. When they're off balance, they feel vulnerable and then they feel like they could be prey to something. That's just how an animal thinks. But we like to put human aspects on them all the time when we actually have to take them down to, at that level, when we're working with them, this is a dog. And so we've got to think like a dog in the moment, right? And so this dog hated its feet done. And I mean, it would get vile, okay? Like it would take you down. It was a big dog, right? It would take you down. And the owner was even a bit only nervous of it when it came to this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the owner came in and I could tell he was, okay, let's try this. Let's try this. And like he'd been through this a million times. The nails were really long. He was like, you could tell this is something that has not been able to get done. And this is not the owner being neglected. This is the owner having to hype him, neglective of the dog. It's that he's had so many bad experiences with the dog doing this that he's just, and so anyway, I actually got the owner into a deep, relaxed state where I'm like, let's just put a muzzle on him. Let's just stand with him on the table, and both of us just stand with him, and you put your hands like on his chest or his heart, like Reiki, and let's just go deep. Let's go relaxed. Let's relax you. You let that dog know it's in an absolutely safe place through your energy by feeling safe in your own body, in your own energy. And do you know what the dog did? It raised its foot up on its own. And I was able to just go clip, 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 and then it put it down. And the owner I burst into tears. You could feel the energy of safety in that little grooming area that I was in my house. And he let me do the rest of it. And the owner he swore, he's like, I never imagined that happening. And I started crying. I'm like, I've never even had that happen. I'm just going with what I felt to do. And it was amazing how the energy of us taking and feeling safe within our world, does that make sense? And then passing it on to the dog because the dog was feeding off that owner's. Does that make sense in that moment?
It just shows how telepathic they actually are, isn't it, really?
100%. It's awesome.
I mean, I've seen people with, I was going to say, I've seen people with, it's quite interesting actually, sort of like trying to explain. So I've done animal behaviorist courses and bits and pieces like that. There's a little sneaky thing that people don't realize I've done. And sort of centering around, your energy and the stuff you predict. It's amazing the amount of people that don't realize that what goes on through a dog's head on a lead, and the energy that you transmit down a lead. And there's a lot of things when a dog's on a lead begin to, some people say, oh, he's reactive and he's this and he's that, and you have to watch, how dogs react. They if they're defensive reactive, that's they're on a lead, that's their area, they're defending their boss. But a lot of the time you can see the energy build up. So I obviously, my ponies are on a public footpath, and you watch people walk down the footpath, and you'll have, some dogs on lead, some dogs are not off lead, some dogs are really respondent and come back and stay to heel and things. But the way the owners are walking, so you'll have a dog that's relaxed by an owner walking, the shoulders are down, there's no tension in the lead is looped. And then you can see somebody coming up that obviously the dog is slightly reactive. And before they've even got to the person with the dog, they've shortened the lead, they've stopped breathing, the shoulders have come up. You can see the tension in the owner, but the dog isn't quite reacting yet. But you can just see that the dog's back has started to straighten and their tail has slightly come up. So, there's starting to be that transmission of energy because the dog's then going, what? Where's the wolf? Where's the danger? What should I be aware of? So they're already looking. So, the people I've seen some people on a couple of people sort of in the local area, and we've been talking about how reactive their dogs are. And I said to her, I said, well, you do realize it's stemming from you. I said, you're shortening the lead, you're holding your breath, you're creating this tension, you're creating this buzz. I said, but the dog doesn't know why you're creating a buzz. It just knows it's happening. And it's like, what am I doing? What should I be scared of? Oh, there's a bear around the corner. I said to her, if you take a deep breath and lower your shoulders and put your energy into the ground rather than putting it down the lead, I said, his attitude will change completely. And sometimes trying to explain that to people is really, really hard. But she did change it slightly and she said, oh, he is better. But lucky enough, she managed to go with someone who was doing dog training as well. So it actually ended up being like a cycle of things because she felt he was getting better going to the dog trainer. She relaxed. So because she relaxed, the next time she saw a dog, she was a lot more relaxed and he didn't react because her energy had actually shifted and changed. But sometimes trying to explain that to people is really difficult because I don't think they realize how much they're putting onto animals.
I don't think a lot of people are in tune with how they're feeling in the moment. A lot of people just aren't aware of the tension and the stuff of themselves. And so that's animals like dogs for me. I'm sorry I interrupted you, Carly. Dogs
No,
for
carry
me.
on.
I was just thinking when you were telling that story of like, I got a dog when I don't know how I got it. I think back and I'm like, now they wouldn't let you. But I went to a rescue society when I was how old was I just I was 18, I guess. Yeah, 17, 18. And I got myself a Rottweiler. And came home to mom and dad with a Rottweiler. And my mom was just like, oh, and I was like, I loved this Rottweiler, but there was a part of me that was also very nervous of her. She wasn't bad, she wasn't mean or anything, but I'd wake up in the night and she'd hump me, like she'd be on top of me, humping me over my covers like crazy. She was a girl. And so at that age, I was like, you pervert. I felt so dirty, not realizing that actually this was dominance.
Dominance, yeah.
Yeah.
Dominating.
And so my mom's like, you got to get rid of that dog. And I said, no, I want to take it to training. So my grandma helped me find a trainer. And that's really when I really realized spirit showing me I had no control over me. I didn't feel the autonomy over me, but I understood that I could influence a dog. Does that make sense? And I felt like I had and like this woman, she was old and crusty that taught the course. She had like her jeans were up just below her little boobies and she came in, her hair was all frizzy. She had back then you could smoke, like it was in the 90s, right? You could smoke everywhere. She had a cigarette like that with like an ash hanging off her mouth and she came in, she was German, okay? It's the thickest German accent. And she had these two German shepherds on heel and she walked in to the place and they were like perfectly beside her off lead. Does that make sense? And as soon as she stopped, they sat. She didn't even have to tell them to sit. And you could tell they were happy.
Please tell me they were called Hans and Zeus or something like that.
I forget what their names are. I forget what their names were. Oh, she was hardcore because they were even in heat and our dogs had to stay like in a stay while she was walking one of them in a heat around our dogs to like, that's like how hardcore she was. This is back in the 90s. It's changed a lot, a lot. Yeah. But the humping, she taught me how to be like a dog with my dog, where I actually kind of like became the alpha. And a lot of people don't agree with that. But with her, it worked in the 90s. Okay, there's new
Mm,
ways, and this is back before, but it taught me more about me. Does that make sense? And the power. And I had this dog not for very long because my mom just didn't like it. But um, in that short period of time, that dog became very well trained. So whoever the next owner was very lucky to get that dog because I had trained that dog to be very, very, very well behaved. And
mm,
but it trained me or taught
mm,
me that
mm,
I could have influence,
mm,
that I could, that I had power. Like when I say power, I don't mean a narcissistic or an empiric power. I just mean power within myself to influence,
mm,
to
Yeah.
get them to behave.
mm,
And I find a lot of people don't realize that they have that, or they're scared to put that on their dog. And it doesn't have to be mean. It doesn't have
mm,
to be authoritarian. It just means that the dog actually is looking to you too
mm.
to share
You
that
have
with
to,
you as the
yeah.
pack.
You have to take with a dog. You have to think about um where they would have come from. So you think of that wolf canine background, that pack thing. You know, um not they need to be domesticated, but they need that authoritarian, that leadership. Because when they then take, obviously, except your Oscar, that's a different Margot. But but you still, you still have, we don't do this. You still have a line. You still,
I've been with Mitch and Oscar, and Oscar's like at me. He was standing on I was sitting on one couch and Oscar was on the other couch, and he was
Ooh.
just like, and I was scared. He looked like he was just gonna fly onto the couch and like land on me, and I'd be like, like that kind of thing. And both Paul and Paul especially, but Mitch and Paul were both like,
no,
no,
we're not doing that. Yeah,
no, enough. And he knew it. He held back. They let him
Yeah.
growl because that's what he needs to
yeah,
do. But they were not going to let him dominate me. Does that
yeah.
make
He has
sense? And
boundaries. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. You
yeah.
tend to, yeah. I was joking when he said.
I'm joking about him going for my neck and me being like,
I don't know. Anything could be possible.
But no, I mean they need that. The thing is, dogs need that. Dogs need that someone's got to take the hierarchy because that's the type of animal they are. They're a domesticated breed, and they need that. And it's just taking that dominance. It's just being assertive in your energy. It's not being aggressive or grabbing them by the scruff of the neck and going and all that. It's just being assertive. This is what we're doing. This is what we're not doing, and having that in your energy. I mean, I did a video. I don't know if you guys ever saw it on Bardware about um actually showing how your energy can affect. And I use my Shetland pony Jack. Um, so Jack, there's something called lunging when you go around on a big long line and the
mm-hmm,
horse goes around you. So instead of having a round pen, which is, sort of what they tend to sort of do out in American things, we have them on a long line so we can keep hold of them. But I showed by raising my energy and picking myself up and literally changing my body language and bringing my energy up, I could make Jack go up into trot. And then by simply thinking walk, I could then slow my energy and bring it halfway down and he'd walk.
that's
And then I
awesome.
could bring
Yeah.
it even further down into the ground and bring my energy further in and lower my shoulders and take a deep breath and breathe out and sigh. And he would actually stop. So he needed a little bit of encouragement, but it was a really good visual aid to I think I did it so that I could show people how bringing your energy up can create, how you could see it manifesting in a beastie. But to have that connection with little Jack is quite, is quite something quite special. And I think sort of, working with the animals and things, I think I was first aware of how my energy sort of reacts is when I first had my ponies when I had my own ponies, which is when I was about 8. But isn't it amazing how that sort of exchange of energy, you can visually see it and it makes you realize how much influence you have on those around you. I mean, horses very much, they always say, you're telegelding, and you ask a mare and you debate it with a stallion. So, Stallion's got all his, tact. Mares you ask because they can be, and it's quite funny between mares and geldings. Mares have seasons, and it's really noticeable when mares have seasons, and they can be ratty, they can be more marish, they can be more tickly, they're more sensitive. But you don't seem to, do you ever find that with that, lady dogs or bitches? Do you ever find that with bitches, if you're grooming them, that they can be more sensitive when
Yeah,
it's
I wouldn't
they're
allow
in
grooming.
season?
I wouldn't accept a dog in season.
Oh,
It's not
okay.
fair to it's messy, first of all.
Yeah, yeah,
It's gross and it's messy. And second of all, it's not fair on the dog because they are in a sensitive state. They're not
mm.
themselves. Does that make sense? I believe they probably get cramping just like other women do. Do you know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? They're constantly, when you're trying to shave that area or anything like that, it's really gross on your equipment. It's gross on your hands. And then they're constantly trying to lick. So they're just like not in the frame of mind. Does that make sense
yeah.
to yet? So, if people brought in their dog in heat, I would be like, and plus, if you have other dogs in the groom shop, it's totally not fair to them
No, no,
because they
true,
can
true.
smell it a mile away. Or if, like, I groomed one to one towards the end of my career, just in my house, I had my own groom shop in my house. But you couldn't get rid of that smell. I couldn't smell it, but you knew the other dogs could smell
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Does that make sense
yeah.
coming in? Mitch, you saying about that exchange of like that telepathy. You have a story about that, about how
If you have a
you were
story,
in
it's quite
a
dark.
pickle. Yeah, you were in a
Yeah,
pickle, and Oscar knew you were in a pickle.
it's a dark story, but I did want to talk about it because I think it does show that bond of, again, telepathic energy, unconditional love. So back when I was in Trowbridge, my house in Trowbridge, I used to do readings in person, and healings and everything else. And I had a client that was not in the area. He was just on business, and he wanted like a Reiki session or a violet flame session. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. He was only here for a short time. Could I fit him in? Blah, blah, blah. Yep. So we agreed a time. And in my home, so I had like a drive, but it kind of led straight into like the kitchen. And then off from the kitchen was my little treatment room. And then you have like the sort of living room door, which is for the living room. And that's where I would put Oscar. So Oscar would be in there, but there was a glass panel, so he could kind of see through what was going on, but not really. But he had an awareness. Anyway, this guy came in like through the kitchen, like all my clients do, and he was fine. He was lovely, very friendly, very jovial, and everything else. I did pre-warn him about Oscar. I said, oh, he might growl or whatever, but and we went through, and as soon as this guy went through, Oscar snatched or snapped. Now he doesn't do that. He sometimes will growl or he will be a bit weird, but he snapped. And I was like, that's really strange. So that was my first warning that something may have been a bit weird. But anyway, so Oscar's in the other room. The door is shut. I go into my treatment room. I put the door sort of to, not completely shut, but it's kind of pulled to, and do all the sort of exchange of what you actually want from the session. Get him to sign all the legal bits and pieces, and then put him on the therapy couch and got him comfortable. And then we start the violet flame session. And when I do a healing session, I kind of go into a bit of a trance. So, like, my eyes are closed and I literally allow spirit to guide me with where I'm going. So, we start with the head, we work all the way down through. Anyway,
And is this
I got
touching or is it
it is hands
energetic?
on touching. It is
Yep,
hands on
yep.
touch. So, we kind of got down through to a point, and then I'd noticed my eyes were closed, but I'd noticed there was a change of energy, and I could feel, and I am going to be a bit graphic now, guys, but this client had got his penis out and he was starting to touch himself, and all of a sudden it had gone from being a healing session
Mm.
to, I'm in a situation here and I need to get this out quick. So I sort of said, what are you doing? Can you put your penis away? That's not what this is about at all. And literally, the guy was like, "You're going to suck my dick. You're going to go down on me." And I
Oh
was like,
God.
"Well, I don't fucking
Oh
think so.
God.
I'm not, And yeah, and he kind of had his like hand around my head as if he was going to sort of try and force me down on him. Luckily, I managed to get off of that. And then he literally become quite violent, and he was like, "I'm literally going to like rape you. I'm going to rape your mouth, and I'm going to rape your ass." I managed to get the door open and I just screamed, Oscar, Oscar, Oscar. And normally he has no real recall, but and bearing in mind the door was shut, he just started jumping up and down on the door and like sort of scratching at it until I don't know how he did it, but like it flung open and he came in like with his fangs out. He didn't actually bite the guy, but he was ready to. And he was
Mm.
like, get the fuck off of him, sort of thing. And I still don't know how he got the door open, but I was able to get the guy out of my house and obviously sort of told the police and everything. The guy had given me a fake identity. I didn't have any sort of security footage of everything, so it was all hearsay, like my word against his. There was nothing
Mm.
I could use to sort of prove this happened. But I didn't really care about that. I was just like, fucking hell, I'm safe. And like literally, I just held Oscar on the floor for probably about half an hour, which again is unheard of because he doesn't usually like to be touched for very long. But he just
Mm.
knew in that moment something
You
was
needed
off,
him.
and I needed,
Mm.
yeah, he needed to sort of intervene. And from that moment, I made the decision never to have people in my home again. And that's why I do my work on Zoom, or I'll do my work in shops where there are other people around. So if there was a problem, I know I have sort of safety. And I think that is one thing that pisses me off a little bit as a therapist, or as a healer or a reader. We focus so much on making the place safe, secure, getting the energy right, and we just have no clue who's walking in.
Mm.
We see everybody in that light of giving them a fair
Mm.
opportunity, but we could have Jack the Ripper coming into our home. We really don't know. And it
Mm.
was at that point I thought, this work is fucking dangerous. And it's never happened before. It's obviously never happened since. But it just gave me that awareness. And I think that's why the experience had to happen. I firmly believe it should have, or it had to happen to give me awareness that actually you're very vulnerable when you're doing energy work, not just with spirit, but with people.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Oscar just knew. He is almost like he knew as soon as that guy walked past, it's like he knew his intentions, or he knew because the fact he snapped, he's never ever done that to any of my other clients.
Mm.
So yeah, it was scary, powerful,
Mm.
and just a whole bunch of emotions. But it was like, wow, the power of like Oscar just kind of stepping up really when I needed it.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
That's amazing. That's it's crazy how people can take. I'm going off kilter here. We did say there would be the odd rabbit hole, but like I was just thinking of something so pure, like the energy that we create as therapists. So, the ones of us that really like. I always tease about love and light, but when we choose to step into that light and really
Mm,
make the energy pure, how how other people's energy, like I've even had it in dog grooming where men or people just turn it pervy and you're
yeah,
like, we're grooming a dog here. Does that make
mm.
sense? But their energy is just
It's not
gross,
aligned. Yeah,
perverted. It's not aligned. So they'll use anything. Does that make sense to feed that
mm,
disgusting energy that they're carrying with them?
Mm.
you know
Mm.
yeah,
so people could say, oh, well, you opened your home up to therapy or whatever. I mean, I've seen it in dog grooming where you're holding a dog and that man is like, you're like holding the dog and they're also touching you, the owner, and you're like, okay, I don't want my breast
touched.
touched
Yeah,
right
get the
now
fuck off
or
sort of
this.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, they'll just use anything to get that. So it's grim. What we take is pure and good in our services, and people use it to take advantage and to fill their own gross needs in that moment, or wants, or whatever you want to call it,
Mm.
It
desires,
is,
whatever.
but I do find with that experience, even though it was awful, it allowed me to really look at my boundaries.
Well, yeah, and look at how much better, like, you got now the privacy of your own home.
Yeah.
You don't have to, that takes a lot of stress out of you having people at your home doing
And
reads and
Oscar's so much
therapy.
more, yeah, and also Oscar's so
Yeah.
much more relaxed because he's not having to tense up when someone comes and be put in another room. And whereas before he would just usually kind of go off upstairs. That was another weird thing. So in that house, the staircase was so steep, so he could go up the stairs, but because he's short-legged, he can't get down. So we would used to have to sort of scratch on the side for one of us to come and carry him down. And that day he didn't go upstairs. Whereas usually, if I would have had a client, he would have just toddled up. And he knew for some reason, no, I need to stay in this area, which he never did. He never did that. So
Yeah.
I find it quite interesting. But yeah, he has a better a time with it now because when I do a Zoom session, he usually will come in and just chill by my feet. He would have never done that before. It wouldn't have been
Hmm.
safe to do that before if a client was physically in my home. So it just works better. And if someone's annoying me or going over on their time, I can just end the Zoom. I can say, right, your time's done, off we go.
You know,
I don't do that, but if I have to, there is the option of that, you know.
well, you feel a bit more in control. Yeah, way more in control, which
Definitely,
you
it
have
just
every
saves.
right to
It
feel.
just
Yeah.
saves. It's safe, you know. Because I think as well and that's one of the reasons we had to leave Trowbridge. I mean, there were other things, you know. Paul had a lot of issues with stuff and different bits that particular house, but the main thing, I lost that sacred space, and I just didn't feel safe, you know. And when you
Mm,
get that in kind of when that's taken and when that's invaded, it's very, very hard to sort of live in a premises after that point in time, you
yeah.
know, because it was like that the home always felt like it had a heartbeat. And after that day, it just felt numb, it just felt dead. And I
Mm,
was like, I can't be here anymore, you know?
yeah, I get
Mm.
that. I get that. Like my Poppy, a story about her. I was dating and I met a man and I I brought him over. We were dating, and then it was the first time he came over to my house, and we were watching TV and having coffee, you know. And I said, "Oh, do you want another coffee?" And he said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." So we got up off the couch, and we he followed me into the kitchen. And when I came back, Poppy shat where he was sitting, and
Oh,
she never had done that to anyone before,
so
right?
that
I'd
was like
had
a
her a number of
warning.
year, and I was with him for 2 years, and he ruined my life.
Oh
And it was like
gosh.
Poppy in that first date was like, "Nope,
She was
don't
saying
want
he
him
was a bit of
here."
shit, literally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like,
This is what he's worth.
He's a
This is
he's
what
a
he's
shit.
worth. You know, this is what he's worth to you. I'm sure like he's worth something in this world, but he had a lot of things that ended up causing me a lot of harm. You know, one thing we haven't talked about, I know that you probably haven't had cats in your life, Mitch, but cats, and there's probably some cat lovers out there that are going, why are they only talking about dogs and
My
horses?
dogs.
And what about our cats? Well, I had cats. I had 7 cats. I was a cat hoarder. I was the cat lady at
you
one
were the
point.
crazy cat lady.
Yeah, I had 7 cats and 2 dogs at one point. My chihuahuas. This is back in Canada. And a story about a cat. I think they're very independent. Dogs are needy and give you that love. Most dogs are needy and give you that love all that time. Cats give you love on their terms. Sorry?
Sorry if you're going to ask, guys. The bin men are out there.
Oh,
He's just asking what's going on. Sorry.
anyway, I had one of my cats was a big fat orange tabby named Boris, right? We never knew how old Boris was. I was married at the time. My now ex-husband did not want to get Boris, but I was a little bit back in my 20s. I did get a bit hoardy with the cats, but I took good care of them. We took very good care of them. They were very happy cats. But I adopted Boris, and he was a big fat orange tabby, and he was the most lush cat. He was just so lovely, so gentle, big paws, you know. Um, anyway, my ex-husband, we didn't have the most brilliant, it's a long story. One night when I went away to stay at a friend's house because we had had a fight, he took all 7 cats and dumped them in a field. And
Oh God.
I came back home and I had none of my cats. And I was absolutely devastated. Lo and behold, 4 years later, we get a phone call, right? And we had never got any other cats in that time, just had the chihuahuas. And got a phone call and they said, "Oh, we've got your cat here." And it was my now ex-husband that answered the phone. I was at work grooming and he said, "Oh, what cat would that be?" And they're like, "Oh, it's a gray cat." And we had a gray cat named Twiggy that we thought, "Oh," and he phoned me and he said they got Twiggy. And I said, okay, but all those years, sorry, those 4 years, I constantly said I really, really like I was really angry at him, but anyway, doesn't have to get into that. But I would say I really I missed them all, but Boris was like my soul cat. Does that make sense? And I was like, I really, really miss Boris, like really miss him. And he said, "Oh, they found Twiggy." And I said, "Oh, where is she?" And he said, yeah, I said, "Where? I'll come and pick her up." Jeff said, and they said, "Oh, we're down in Calgary." We were in Edmonton, which is 3 hours away. So that cat had gotten 3 hours away. And he said, "Oh, I've got the day off the next day. I'll come down to Calgary and pick her up." And they're like, perfect. So he went down to the RSPCA in Calgary to pick what he thought was Twiggy. And he went in there and he was like, "Boris?" They're like, oh, here's your cat. We found the microchip. It was way down in his foot. He had been adopted out a number of times, and people had brought him back not wanting him. Beats me why, because he was awesome. But they could never find a microchip in him, and it was because it had migrated down into his like foot area. And they finally found one with my phone number on it. And he didn't tell me it was Boris until I got home and I opened the door and that Boris had greeted me in the house. Well, lo and behold, Boris acted like a day hadn't passed that he was gone from us. And we ended up getting a divorce, long story, Rose. I ended up going to England and my mom said, I'll take Boris for you. And my stepdad, who's now passed away, fell in love with Boris. Boris was his man. And Boris brought a lot of healing to my stepdad in his life because he had a lot of trauma just with being with him, sitting on his lap, was with him through his dementia and stuff like that. And then it came that Boris was dying. He had mouth cancer. And my mom took him to the vet. And my mom's not very good at this kind of stuff. She was really scared to take him because he had gotten quite sick. And she was scared the vet was going to judge her. And then she was also scared that, yeah, she just doesn't like, she didn't want to be in the room when the cat was passing away because she thought she'd lose it. But they said to her, it's best you're there because they feel safer with you there. So anyway, long story, gonna end it now. My mom was with the vet, and the vet said, I normally don't do this with people, but I feel like I need to say a prayer for you and Boris. And my mom's like, okay. And he's like, you're all right with me saying a prayer? I just want to get your permission. My mom's like, I'm fine with you saying a prayer over the cat. I mean, he went into this prayer of how Boris had been he felt that Spirit was saying Boris had been very special to a lot of people and how he came into this earth to kind of be passed from one person to another to share his magic and his love and how there was someone overseas, he said, and that was me, that really loved this cat. And
Oh, wow.
they said a little prayer and let him go. But it just showed me that each animal has their own story and it might not be perfect and it might not be great, but just like us, we signed up for the story.
Exactly.
And that story has magic in it and healing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's lush. Well, that's a really nice story. Just to let you know, guys, we're well over the witching hour. Sorry, I completely lost track of time. Oh,
But yeah,
sorry about that.
I believe, and I think we all believe that animals are, when I say all, the three of us really believe that, like, when I was raised in the church, they said animals don't have a soul and that when you die, they don't go to heaven. I was raised believing that. And actually, as a child, made me feel really, really sad. And I
Gosh.
don't
See,
believe
that's
that at
really
all. I think
interesting.
my animals are all going to greet me when I come over on the other side in the energetic field, totally.
Yeah.
You know?
See, as a child, I was so into like Egyptianology, and cats and dogs featured so heavily in Egyptian times, but in being gatekeepers for the afterlife and everything else. So it's interesting that you have that religious side, and then sort of history has got this other version, hasn't it?
Mm.
Really,
Mm.
it
Mm.
is interesting. But
Mm.
yeah,
No,
from
I
my
definitely.
mediumistic stuff, they come through often more so than bloody the humans sometimes.
Mm. Mm.
And there are some
I
really
definitely
good
think they're all
mediums
there.
out there. Yeah, there are some very good mediums out there that actually specialize in your animals.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know, that they have that special attunement where their animals come in. So, yeah. Well, should we end it there, lovelies?
I think so because we're nearly on 2 o'clock. Like, sorry, Johnny's gonna have to get to work soon. Oh,
And I've drank a lot of Ribena here, so my bladder is like
oh, so you're
swimming.
like holding from the leg. You're
Yeah,
like
I should have worn
coming
my
out of loop
diaper.
for
I
your.
really should have worn. I normally wear my adult diaper. If you just see me staring off into space and they think, oh, she's really being contemplative, it's just me pissing myself. No, I'm
On that
sitting in my
note,
own warmth.
well, she always lowers the tone every bloody week, doesn't she?
I don't
You
know.
give me
We
a
do a
bar,
cracking show.
I'll cross it. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, you guys. If you want, Colin can
Oh,
edit it out.
no, I love it. I love it. It cracks me up. It cracks me up. Oh, well,
Oh,
thanks for having us, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Lots of love and light, and give your animals an extra cuddle that week, knowing how much they love you.
Definitely. Oh, awesome. Oh, take
Bye for
care,
now.
guys, and see you soon.
See you
Bye.
soon. Bye.